The sun, a brass gong struck repeatedly by an invisible hand, hammered Elias's exposed neck. He squinted at the shimmering horizon, a line that wobbled like cheap jelly. His truck, a rust-flecked behemoth named the Wanderer, by its previous, more optimistic owner, sat baking behind him, its engine a silent, metallic tomb. The GPS, usually his unwavering guide, had flatlined an hour ago, its screen a dead black rectangle. He'd taken the shortcut, the old prospector's trail, a path etched onto a faded map he'd bought from a toothless man in a dusty saloon. "Cuts 3 hours off," the man had rasped, spitting tobacco juice into a rusty can. Elias now understood why. 3 hours, huh? Elias mumbled, his voice a dry rasp. The words felt like sandpaper against his throat. He pulled his wide-brimmed hat lower, though it offered little solace against the inferno. His backpack, heavier than he remembered, dug into his shoulders. 2 liters of water. Not enough. He knew it even then, the moment he'd decided to leave the truck. But staying meant certain death, a slow bake inside a metal box. Movement, however futile, felt like a defiance. He walked, each step sinking slightly into the fine, ochre dust. The air shimmered, a living thing, distorting the distant, jagged mountains into fantastical beasts with gaping maws. A buzzard circled overhead, a black speck against the relentless blue, its patience a cruel promise. "Not yet, you feathered ghoul," Elias growled, shaking a fist at the sky. His mouth felt like cotton batting. A bead of sweat, thick and salty, tracked a path down his temple, stinging his eye. He blinked, the world momentarily blurring into a watercolor smear of orange and brown. He pressed on, his boots crunching on sun-baked earth and loose stones. The silence was absolute, broken only by the rhythmic thud of his own footsteps and the insistent thump of his heart against his ribs. He scanned the horizon, desperate for any sign of life, a smudge of green, a distant structure, anything. Just a little further, he told himself, the mantra thin and reedy. Just over this rise. He crested the first small dune, his breath catching in his throat. More of the same. Endless, undulating waves of sand and rock, stretching to an indistinguishable horizon. Despair, a cold, clammy hand, squeezed his chest. He pulled out his water bottle, unscrewed the cap. A tiny sip, just enough to wet his tongue. He fought the urge to gulp it down, to let the cool liquid wash away the fire in his throat. Discipline. He needed it now more than ever. "Damn fool," he muttered, his gaze fixed on a distant, shimmering haze. It looked like water, a wide, placid lake reflecting the sky. His heart gave a hopeful lurch. But then the haze shifted, distorted, became a rock formation. He shook his head, a grimace twisting his lips. "No, no, not yet," he chastised himself. Eyes playing tricks. He kept walking, the sun climbing higher, hotter. His shirt, already damp with sweat, clung uncomfortably to his skin. He felt the burn of it, a slow, steady roasting. His thoughts started to fray at the edges, like old rope. He pictured his apartment, the cool tile floors, the refrigerator humming with cold drinks. The image was so vivid he almost stumbled. "Focus, Elias," he commanded, his voice a strained whisper. Hours bled into one another. The shadows, once sharp and defined, softened, elongated, then vanished as the sun reached its zenith. His head throbbed, a dull, insistent ache. His vision blurred more frequently now, the desert floor undulating like a sea. He knew he needed shade, a place to rest, to escape the direct assault of the sun. He spotted a cluster of boulders in the distance, a dark smudge against the blinding light. Blinding light. "There," he rasped, pointing a trembling finger. "Over there." He stumbled towards them, his legs heavy, each step an effort of will. The rocks seemed to recede as he approached, a cruel optical illusion. He fought down the rising panic. When he finally reached them, his knees buckled. He collapsed into the sliver of shade they offered, his back against the rough, sun-baked stone. The air here was marginally cooler, a small reprieve. He closed his eyes, his breathing ragged. "Water," he whispered. He uncapped the bottle again, took another agonizingly small sip. It barely touched the dryness. He felt the desperation clawing at him, an animal snarl in his gut. A rustling sound. Elias's eyes snapped open. A creature, long and slender, with scales the color of burnt umber, slithered from beneath a rock nearby. Its head, triangular and flat, lifted, two obsidian eyes fixed on him. A rattlesnake. "Stay back," Elias hissed, his voice weak but laced with a primal fear. He didn't have the energy to move, let alone fight. The snake held its ground, its forked tongue flicking the air, tasting him. The faint, dry rattle of its tail began. A soft warning, a prelude to a strike. "Go on," Elias pleaded, trying to wave a hand. "Leave me be." The snake didn't move. Its gaze was unblinking, ancient. Elias slowly, carefully, reached for a small rock beside him. His fingers trembled, brushing against the hot stone. He gripped it, his knuckles white. The rattle intensified, a dry, buzzing hum that vibrated through the ground. Then, just as he thought it would coil, it turned, its scaled body flowing over the rocks, disappearing into a crevice with a final, lingering rattle. Elias let out a shuddering breath he hadn't realized he was holding. His heart hammered against his ribs. "Thanks for that," he muttered, a bitter laugh escaping his lips. "Just what I needed." The sun began its slow descent, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The air cooled, a welcome balm, but the thirst remained, a burning coal in his throat. He ate a handful of trail mix, the dry nuts and fruit almost impossible to swallow without water. Each bite felt like chewing sand. He lay there, watching the stars emerge, impossibly bright in the clear desert sky. Orion the hunter stood guard. The Big Dipper, a celestial ladle, mocked his thirst. He thought of home again, of his sister, Sarah. She'd warned him about this trip. "Don't go off-grid, Elias," she'd said, her brow furrowed. "The desert's a beautiful killer." He should have listened. He drifted into a fitful sleep, haunted by dreams of rushing rivers and overflowing fountains. He woke with a start, the desert night cold around him. The moon, a sliver of silver, cast long, eerie shadows. His tongue felt swollen, his lips cracked. He reached for his last bottle of water. Half full, he took another small sip, his mind already rationing the remaining drops. The second day dawned with a ferocity that matched the first. The sun, a vengeful god, rose above the eastern horizon, instantly stripping away the night's brief coolness. Elias felt weaker, his movements sluggish. His legs ached, his head pounded. He pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. "Gotta keep moving," he whispered, the words barely audible. "Gotta find something." He walked, his gaze fixed on the ground, searching for any sign of a track, a dried riverbed, anything that might lead to water. The vastness of the desert pressed in on him, a crushing weight. He felt utterly alone, a tiny, insignificant speck. Then he saw it, a shimmer on the horizon, distinct from the heat haze. A structure, a building. His heart leaped, a wild bird trapped in his chest. "Yes!" he croaked, a ragged shout of triumph. Finally! He stumbled towards it, his pace quickening, spurred by a fresh surge of hope. The building grew larger, clearer. It was a small, dilapidated shack, its wooden walls bleached by years of sun, its roof partially collapsed. It looked abandoned, but it was shelter. It was a sign of human presence. He reached the shack, his hands scraping against the rough wood as he leaned against it, panting. The door hung ajar, groaning on rusty hinges. He pushed it open, stepping inside. The air was thick with dust and the smell of decay. Light filtered through cracks in the walls, illuminating motes of dust dancing in the air. "Hello?" he called out, his voice hoarse. No answer, only the dry whisper of the wind through the gaps in the walls. He scanned the small, single room. A rusted cot, A table overturned. A few broken tools scattered on the dirt floor. Nothing. No water, no supplies. Despair, a heavy cloak, settled over him again. He sank to the floor, leaning against a wall, his head in his hands. Nothing, he choked out. Nothing at all. His vision swam. The dust motes in the air began to coalesce, to form shapes. A woman, her face veiled by shadow, stood by the overturned table. She wore a long, flowing dress, the fabric shimmering. "Lost are we, dearie?" she asked, her voice a soft, melodic hum that seemed to echo in the small space. Elias blinked, shaking his head. Who are you?" She smiled, a hint of white teeth in the gloom. "Just a traveler, like yourself, though I've been here a good long while." She gestured around the shack. "This was my home once. Do you have any water?" Elias pleaded, his throat burning. "Please, I'm dying of thirst." She tilted her head, her shadowy form seeming to waver. "Water? Oh, there's plenty of water. Just over that ridge, you see? A beautiful spring, cool and clear." She pointed towards the far wall, where a crack of light shone through. Elias pushed himself up, his eyes wide with renewed hope. "A spring? Really? Where?" "Just over there," she repeated, her voice fading slightly. "But you must be careful. The desert plays tricks." He stumbled out of the shack, his gaze fixed on the distant ridge. The sun was still high, but the promise of water propelled him forward. He walked, his mind fixed on the spring, on the cool, clear water. The woman's words, her melodic hum, echoed in his ears. He walked for what felt like hours, the ridge never seeming to get closer. The sun beat down relentlessly. His head throbbed, a drumbeat of pain. The woman's voice grew louder in his mind, then faded, replaced by other sounds. A child's laughter, the distant clatter of a train. Of a train. He tripped, falling hard onto the scorching sand. His last water bottle, clutched in his hand, flew from his grasp, rolling a few feet away. He stared at it, unable to move, unable to reach. The desperation turned to a cold, hollow fear. He was going to die here. A shadow fell over him. He looked up, squinting. A figure stood over him, tall and gaunt, clad in a tattered duster, a wide-brimmed hat obscuring his face. "Lost your way, friend?" the figure asked, his voice a dry rustle, like leaves skittering across the sand. Elias managed a weak nod. "Water," he croaked. "Please." The figure bent down, his face still in shadow. He held out a canteen. "Help yourself, but it comes at a price." Elias reached for it, his hand trembling. "Any price." The figure chuckled, a dry, grating sound. "Oh, it will be. It always is." Elias snatched the canteen, fumbling with the cap. He brought it to his lips, expecting the cool rush of water. But it was empty, bone dry. He stared at it, then at the figure. It's empty," he whispered, tears stinging his dry eyes. The figure straightened, his shadow stretching long and distorted in the afternoon sun. "A mirage, friend, just like me." He laughed again, a sound devoid of humor. "The desert takes many forms to tempt you." Elias watched, horrified, as the figure began to shimmer, to distort, its edges blurring into the heat haze. The duster, the hat, the gaunt face, all dissolved into the shimmering air. Elias was alone again, the empty canteen still clutched in his hand. He stared at it, then threw it away in a fit of impotent rage. "No!" he screamed, the sound tearing his throat. "No more!" He pushed himself up, his body screaming in protest. He had to keep moving. He had to find real water. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky in fiery oranges and purples. He had made no progress. He was still lost. He stumbled onward, his mind a kaleidoscope of fragmented thoughts and vivid images. His sister's face worried and stern, the cool taste of a beer, the roar of his truck's engine. He saw an oasis, palm trees swaying, a clear pool of water reflecting the sky. He ran towards it, his legs burning, his lungs screaming. He reached it, plunging his hands into the cool, clear liquid. He brought it to his lips, gulping it down. It was sweet, life-giving. Ah, he sighed, a wave of relief washing over him. He opened his eyes. He was kneeling in front of a thorny, dried-up bush, his hands buried in the hot sand. There was no water, no oasis, just the mocking, endless desert. He cried out, a raw, animal sound of despair. He pounded the sand with his fists, the impact jarring his already aching bones. He was losing his mind. The desert was winning. He lay there, sprawled on the sand, for a long time, watching the sun dip below the horizon, plunging the world into a sudden, cool darkness. The stars came out, a million pinpricks of light in the vast, inky blackness. He felt a strange sense of calm descend upon him, a resignation. He had fought, he had tried, but the desert was too big, too powerful. He closed his eyes, drifting in and out of consciousness. He heard voices, faint whispers carried on the night wind. His mother's voice, singing a lullaby. His father's deep laugh. He saw their faces, clear and vivid, as if they were right there beside him. Elias. His mother's voice whispered, soft as a desert breeze. You must keep going. You're stronger than this sun. His father's voice rumbled. Don't give up. He opened his eyes. The moon was high, a brilliant orb in the sky. He felt a flicker of something deep within him. Not hope exactly, but a stubborn refusal to surrender. He had to try. One more time. He pushed himself to his hands and knees, then slowly, painfully to his feet. His legs wobbled, threatening to give out. He took a step, then another. He didn't know where he was going, but he had to move. He walked through the night, guided by the moon and the stars. His mind was a blur, his body an automaton. He stumbled, fell, picked himself up. He was no longer thinking, only moving. As the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky with a faint, pale light, he saw it. A faint glimmer in the distance, barely distinguishable from the rising sun's glare. It wasn't a building or a mirage. It was a faint, almost imperceptible line of green. Green, he croaked, his voice raw. Green. He focused on it, on that single, impossible smudge of color in the endless brown. He walked towards it, his pace a slow, agonizing shuffle. The green grew slowly, tantalizingly. It became a cluster of small, hardy desert plants. And beneath them, a faint, dark line. Orange. A dry riverbed. But sometimes, in the desert, dry riverbeds held secrets. He stumbled into the wash, his feet sinking into the loose, rocky soil. He followed the winding path, his eyes scanning the ground, searching. His heart was a drum in his chest, a frantic beat of desperate hope. Then he saw it. A small depression in the sand, lined with darker, damp-looking earth. A trickle of water, barely a seep, emerged from beneath a cluster of rocks, pooling into a small, muddy puddle. Water, he whispered, his voice choked with emotion. Real water. He fell to his knees, his hands shaking. He scooped up a handful of the muddy liquid, bringing it to his parched lips. Tasted of earth and minerals, but it was water. Cool. Wet. Life. He drank slowly, carefully, allowing his body to absorb the precious fluid. He didn't care about the mud, about the taste. It was salvation. He drank until his stomach ached, until the burning in his throat subsided. He leaned back against the cool, damp earth, his eyes closed. He was still lost, but he had water. He had survived. The sun rose higher, but its heat no longer felt like a death sentence. He spent the next few hours resting, drinking, and slowly, carefully exploring the wash. He found more seeps, enough to fill his empty bottles. He found a small, sheltered overhang, offering precious shade. He ate the last of his trail mix, savoring each bite. He felt a deep exhaustion, but also a quiet strength. The hallucinations had faded, replaced by the stark reality of the desert. But now he saw it differently. Not just a killer, but a place of raw, unforgiving beauty. a place that had tested him, pushed him to his limits, and in doing so had shown him something about himself. As the day wore on, he began to formulate a plan. He would follow the wash. Dry riverbeds often led to larger bodies of water, or at least to more hospitable terrain. He still had a long way to go, but he wasn't defeated. He stood up, his body still stiff but his mind clear. He looked out at the vast, shimmering expanse of the desert. The buzzard still circled overhead, but now it felt less like a harbinger of death and more like a distant companion. "All right, dessert," Elias said, his voice stronger now, though still hoarse. A faint, knowing smile touched his lips. Round 2. He began to walk, following the winding path of the wash, one careful, determined step after another. The end.